Welcome to the stage, Raj Gokal, co-founder of Solana, and Matthew Diemer, host of Decrypt Daily Podcast.
Excellent. Looks like we're live. Raj, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Every time when I want to start some of these conversations, I need to start at the beginning because, look, there's people watching, thousands of people watching the Ethereal Summit by Decrypt right now, and I don't know what level they're at. I don't know if they're just coming into the game. I don't know if they're just curious. I don't know if this is the first time they're going to hear about Solana. So I want to just take it all the way back and talk about the origin story of Solana. Man, tell us, where did this all start?
Yeah, so really it kind of came from a fever dream from Anatoly Yakovenko. He is my co-founder. He's kind of the genius alien brain that came up with the concept and the architecture for Solana back in around 2017. So, as was the genesis for a number of other projects, looked at the market in 2017, saw a pretty clear problem with scalability, CryptoKitties and other things kind of congesting the network. And Anatoly actually, wrote me into crypto, and I was fairly fresh back then. And the only thing he needed to tell me was if the entire population of Berkeley, was to use Ethereum and or Bitcoin, 3 or 4 times a day, that's the capacity. So that was a problem that I think a lot of teams set off to go and solve. And Anatoly has this background from Qualcomm. 12 years he spent there, kind of like in the SEAL Team 6, solving all the hardest problems in embedded systems and distributed systems and operating systems, and just has a ton of experience with the types of networks that we've seen really solve these scalability types of problems. Wireless networks and even going back to radio towers have solved the congestion problem in distributed systems for decades. And I think the insight that Anatoly had was while a lot of folks were going to go and focus on sharding, so even Ethereum's kind of path to scalability has been kind of stated to be like a sharding based approach, and side chains and layer 2s and all these things are just more chains that are interoperable with one another, and different words for different terms for ultimately what is a sharding implementation. Anatoly's insight was, in distributed systems, sharding is always supposed to be the last thing you do. It introduces a lot of complexity. It introduces overhead. There's security trade-offs. Let's squeeze as much as we can out of the network bandwidth that is available. And the way to do that, the way that even going back to radio towers, you accomplish that is it's called TDMA, time division multiple access. So with radio towers, the first thing they did was put a clock on multiple towers and have them alternate messaging so that you're not transmitting over the same frequency, the same bandwidth at the same time. And the problem in crypto is who do you trust to keep that clock? You can't trust anybody. So that's what proof of history is. It's the source of time before consensus, and that didn't exist before. It's a pretty simple and elegant solution. You can read more about Solana's architecture and what makes it work, but I think the big takeaway is that the thesis was we were missing time before consensus. We solved that. We built a network from scratch with blood, sweat, and tears, and a couple dozen engineers over a couple years. We launched a year ago. The Solana network at this point is mainnet with over 16 billion transactions processed. The results of that architectural design are it's very, very fast. It's the fastest and cheapest and highest throughput chain in the world, and we expect it to continue to be probably forever. And so it's like 400 millisecond block times. We've benchmarked it up to 50 to 65,000 transactions per second, which is kind of like Visa's throughput. Transactions are about $10 to $50 for a million transactions. So very, very cheap, and that's why we've seen a lot of traction, a lot of growth, and really big, audacious, visionary use cases pop up in the year since the network was launched.
Excellent. So you mentioned something at the very beginning. I want to make sure that everybody understands this before we move on. And you said the problem with scalability. What you're trying to say is that the Ethereum and Bitcoin networks right now cannot handle the throughput or the amount of transactions needed to actually do anything useful with a blockchain. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I mean, there's plenty of useful stuff that's happening on Ethereum
Okay,
and Bitcoin, right?
so then I want to reframe that question. Then, what is the problem with scalability that you mentioned in the earlier part of your statement?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just I think without having that source of time before consensus, you can think of the congestion in networks as basically everyone not being able to coordinate when is a block being produced, when do I send my messages, and ultimately everyone's sort of fighting to get into a block and to produce a block, and that's what consensus is in Ethereum and Bitcoin, and proof of work is the most established, longest track record, consensus. But I think the industry's established that there's a strong path forward in having proof of stake as a separate consensus mechanism, and Solana is proof of stake based. So I think one way to think of it is every approach to scalability for all of these chains is proof of stake, but Solana is kind of the one that did the thought experiment of how do you implement proof of stake, getting out of the hardware and taking full control and advantage of all of the network bandwidth available and all of the hardware available, and how you kind of get out of the way of that and make a system that that will scale up in terms of how many transactions per second it'll process as you throw more hardware cores, more validators and scale horizontally, and as Nielsen's law also improves network bandwidth over time, this network should get faster and more high throughput over time as well.
So then I just moves into another basic question. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what Solana is. What is Solana? And are you looking at Solana as being a direct competitor to Ethereum or Binance Smart Chain, or is it something completely different? And how would it operate within like that ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, good question. It's like the space is still super early, and I think we are being surprised at how teams are fitting Solana and Ethereum into the resource set for launching decentralized applications and protocols. But in terms of where they fit in, I mean, technically, I think it would be unfair to say that it's not competitive, right? I mean, if people are trying to launch decentralized applications and protocols and have them be censorship resistant and use smart contracts and launch all the things that we've seen already on Ethereum, but do it 10,000 times faster and cheaper. Solana can do all of those things, and it doesn't necessarily depend on any security guarantees that Ethereum has, but it is interoperable with Ethereum. You can move tokens on and off of Ethereum and Solana through the wormhole bridge. It's a bidirectional, ERC20 compatible bridge. Solana has its own token standard called SPL, but you can imagine that in the future, all of these chains are interoperable with one another, and block space is like fungible. So it doesn't matter where a token was originally issued or minted. It can move, on and off of all of these chains. And I think what we expect and what we've built is that this will always be the fastest and cheapest rails for moving those tokens around and for doing any of that decentralized computation. Where that fits in the long run, it's like I don't know. I mean, some people have said, is Solana just a layer 2 to Ethereum? Sure, if that's what if that's a valuable framework to think of it, that's okay. I think we're just so focused on performance and pushing that to its extremes that we don't really have a lot of opinions about where it fits in. But you see things like Audius where they're doing like the governance and keep the governance token, and they have kind of the ERC20 that they've connected to exchanges and wallets with, and then all of their likes and playlist creation and follows and all of the metadata around songs, all the interaction that happens on this basically decentralized Spotify. Everything that needs to be snappy and fast and responsive is all on Solana, and it's still censorship resistant. It's still distributed and decentralized, but they're kind of using across 2 platforms.
You said something else really interesting there, and I have more questions about your products and what you're doing in the future. But this was something that just I kind of brought up. You said people kind of think of it as a layer 2 for Ethereum, but Ethereum is really pushing for Ethereum 2.0. which is kind of trying to level their, get their speed up and get their, scalability issues under control. If you said everything's going to be interoperable with everything in the future, wouldn't it be just smart for, say, something like Ethereum just to wait for you guys to do your thing so they could just, swap it back and forth without actually worrying about the development themselves? Just like let you guys take care of it and then just chill back and just, capitalize off the benefits of what you guys are doing?
Sure. I mean, it exists now, right? So, again, Ethereum is open and permissionless, and Solana devs and the Solana community can kind of do whatever they want with it, and vice versa, right? So, if Ethereum wants to use, if Ethereum Foundation, let's say, or the Ethereum core devs want to use Solana for anything, they're totally, welcome to. Maybe in the future, maybe Ethereum, 4.0 is just Solana. I'm not sure, right? I think everyone's just experimenting right now. Our experiment is one approach, which is how do you take advantage of all the network bandwidth and hardware without sharding, and implement a proof of stake protocol. I think Ethereum's approach with like ZK rollups and layer twos and side chains and Matic and all of that. I think, really every approach to scalability is being played out. And I think it's definitely up to, the Ethereum community to decide where Solana fits in and where these other layer twos fit in.
And everybody that's watching right now to your website, because you guys have this pretty cool game that says test or try to break the network, try to break Solana. And it basically has you push a button as fast as you can, as many times as you can, and watch the confirmations roll through. Can you tell me a little bit about that game? Because I thought it was a really cool really cool thing to add to your website to show the capabilities of Solana. Because they also gave me metrics when I played the game. It said when I played the game, it said that what I did with that game, it was 43% of using Ethereum's network, or 160% of using the Bitcoin network. Can you go a little bit more in depth with that?
Yeah. So if you remember what I said earlier, I think Bitcoin runs at the number. You hear different numbers at different times, but I think it's about 7 transactions per second before the network becomes congested. And Ethereum, the base layer is like 14 or so transactions per second. And Solana is running at there are actually over 1,000 transactions per second, like that are actually being produced and live on the network. On average right now on Solana, right? And that's the actual activity. The capacity of the network is, far beyond that. We haven't really seen it. It's been stressed at more like the infra layer and the application layer. We've seen, things kind of have performance degradation in the year, but the base layer is just like, it's extremely high capacity and it's extremely fast. So that's what kind of goes into the calculation for those numbers and what you're seeing. And the break demo is it's really interesting because like we just built it. We were so focused on just getting this high performance network out live, in the world, that we didn't even build like a block explorer. We didn't build any demos that were meant to be like, full-fledged products. This thing was just the most immediate, easy way to have unpredictable input, which is literally like for everyone, listening that hasn't tried it, break is, you just smash your keyboard. You just literally spam your keyboard, and every keystroke is a smart contract transaction. And you can watch as, the transaction is, sent to the nearest block producer, distributed to the network. Right now we've got over 600 validators around the world. Some of them are behind the Chinese firewall. Consensus is reached, and you can see finality as the blocks on the screen turn green. And we did that as a demo, internally, to just see the stability of the network in a very visceral way. But in the first 3 months of the network's life last year, we just started demoing this to everyone in the industry, because I think part of what we had realized was a lot of chains had made claims and had a plan for achieving scalability and performance, but not many of them could really demo something like that because they weren't live. It wasn't actually on mainnet, or when you really got down to it with an implementation of like an unpredictable use case with people actually using it, it just didn't actually perform. And that's, what a lot of the devs over the last year that have built these big audacious use cases like Audius and Serum and Radium and Kin, they all kind of go through that process of looking at what's actually live and performant. We've had a year now of kind of being the only thing that really passes that test. So that's why Break is like the first thing on the site, because it's just try and put that on any other chain and see what happens. Maybe some others would handle it well now. I'm not sure, but certainly for the last year, Solana's really stood out if you just use that very immediate performance benchmark of scanning your keyboard.
It was very effective, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. And I have two questions. The lords of the summit told us we only had 5 minutes left, and that was like 1 minute ago. So I want to ask these two questions. First one, what's your dog's name?
Oh, that's Myro, and he's, I think, sniffing something outside of the door. Myro, come here. Yeah, he just turned 1 year old this past Saturday. That's Myro.
Oh, there you go. What's up, dude?
Yeah, he's a Labradoodle.
Awesome.
He's getting pretty famous these days. He's walking around in the background.
I know everybody that was watching the conference was wondering what's going on with the dog back there. So good. I'm happy we met him. And last question is tell us some upcoming things happening on Solana. What are you excited about coming down the pipe?
Yeah, so kind of just going back to that story, like in last November, we weren't sure because Solana is Rust, right? I mean, right now that's the language to use. It will be EVM compatible in the future. But we weren't sure, did we have enough up and running for devs to get started? Last November, we started a hackathon. There were 1,000 entrants. There were a couple dozen, submissions, and they were pretty good. And we were shocked. We were surprised that, that many folks showed up. About a month and a half ago, did another one. There were 3,000 registrants, 100 projects were launched. And I think at least 10 of them are now seed funded with like top investors in the space. And right now, registrations are open for the Solana season hackathon, which is a summer hackathon. It's got 6 global tracks. There are I think 7 or 8 different ecosystem funds around the world. With partners like OKX and CoinDCX in China and in India. We're at 5,000 registrations already. If you look at Twitter, there's a ton of teams that have already, announced their participation. People are building, in DeFi, in NFTs, Web3. There's literally every use case that has existed on Ethereum, and many that just can't exist on Ethereum are all getting built out. But I think the most important thing is it's not about, there's $1 million in prizes, but it's, people are feeling like, a sense of community, and they're finding their place by applying and forming teams and collaborating on projects for the hackathon. So that's the thing right now.
Awesome. I'm reading the comments right now. Everybody's saying that's a sign to buy Doge. That's hilarious. Your dog in the background.
We should make him a coin.
You should, and put him on Solana, of course. Try to break the dog.
Great. I'm gonna do that today.
Oh yeah. We're gonna start a new coin. That's awesome, man. Can I be a co-founder?
Totally. You're the chief marketing officer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very, very much. Look, it was very nice meeting you, and I'm really excited about everything that's happening with Solana right now. I'm not really too sure about how much time we have left, so I don't want to just really go back and start asking some really deep questions that would deep dive. Actually, they just said please wrap it up. Oh, it was very nice meeting you. Very nice talking about Solana, and I will hope to have you on the Decrypt Daily, the podcast for Decrypt, and I hope to see you guys supporting my bid for Congress, because I'm running for Congress. Matthew Aaron Diemer for Congress.
Oh, wow. Snuck that in there. That's great.
I 100% did. You got to, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, everyone. Take care.